when most people hear the words becoming your own banker, or they hear the words the infinite banking concept for the first time, it may trigger some degree of curiosity, but it doesn't resonate. What do you mean when you say that? But unless you understand the problem, the solution just won't matter to you.
Jayson, thank you for joining us on the Infinite Banking Initiative podcast. We want to start off by hearing your story. How did you discover, what was it first, the Becoming Your Own Banker, the book, or was it the infinite banking concept?
That's a great question. And I'm honored, sincerely honored to be here. Thank you both for having me. I think back to July of 2008, and I was in attendance at a event in Las Vegas. And there were 300 plus advisors. And this was an event where we were told we were going to learn what was referred to as the banker's optimal system of security, the BOSS system. I had no idea what the infinite banking concept was, what the process of becoming your own banker was. I had no idea what dividend paying life insurance was. The only reason why I attended that conference was a gentleman that I had got acquainted with, who's still a dear friend to this day. He had reached out to me because my wife, Rebecca, and I lived and worked in Tampa, Florida. So we spent some time in the United States. And given that Matt was from the US as well, he said, "Hey, we're going to this conference. We're going to learn this incredible process. You should come out for a few days and discover it. If anything, we'll get to hang out and have a good time." And I decided to go. And it was a domino that tipped over for me. I had no idea that the book Becoming Your Own Banker had even existed. It was not being discussed there. And I didn't get the opportunity to meet Nelson until 2011 is when I first met Nelson at an event in Michigan. And I will never forget that moment for the rest of my life, because by that time I had read his book. I had immersed myself in learning about the concept, but I had not yet had the opportunity to meet him. So I walked into this room. It was a sales conference in Michigan, and I dropped my bag onto the chair at the table that I was about to sit at. And right across the row was Nelson. And he was invited. I later learned to understand he was invited to this sales conference every year. And he was seated right across the row. And so I introduced myself, and we got to talking, as Nelson did. And I'll never forget this. So Nelson paused for a moment after about a minute or two of chatting, and he looks up at me and he says, "May I ask where you're from?" And I said, "Yes, Nelson, of course." I said, "I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada." And he said, "Huh, I'm surprised y'all can speak American." And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of a connection, of a mentor-mentee relationship that Nelson had with so many people. He was just so generous with his wisdom and with his time. But that was where it all began. And like I said, I'll never forget that day for the rest of my life, because I had no idea what was ahead in terms of a bigger future and being able to share this process with people now across North America, let alone Canada.
When you say things like that, I have a visual image, number one, and I have his voice also, his southern drawl. And of course, everything he did was not spontaneous, but it was genuine,
He was a man with near perfect integrity, and I always respected that about him. And he always led with the truth. He always was just so generous with his wisdom, but he was so effective at helping you to think about your thinking, not his. That's what he really wanted you to do, is to think about your thinking, not his. And so an example of that is simple. Anytime you asked him a question about something in the book, he would always redirect you back to somewhere in the book. He would invite you to read through it, think about it, and then reconnect with him and share your thinking with him. So he wouldn't serve up the answers. And that was the best method of teaching. And so we we do what we can to honor that approach. And that's how we serve, people that we lift up in the practitioner capacity and help them to serve the people in the way that Nelson intended.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're a lot more squared away than I am, because he employed that question and answer technique on me for years, and all I did was get frustrated.
Yeah. Well, but that could be sort of a doorway to rethinking your thinking, right? And he would let people sit in that. Like if somebody got frustrated and, Nelson, just give me the answer. And he would always it was that pregnant pause. And then he would simply redirect you back to the book. And he would say, I need you to read it carefully, think about it, and then get back in touch with me. And we'll share a conversation about your insights. So he was always, always inviting you to think about your thinking. That's one of many things that I just loved about him so much.
Well, that's rule number 5 is rethink your thinking.
That's right.
And that did come from you. So congratulations you made the top 5 list.
Jayson, you're talking about reading the book. What was your first impression when you read that book?
I had many. What I can say initially is that I was so early in my understanding of the tool that's used to implement the concept, dividend paying life insurance, ideally with a mutual company. So I was in pure fact finding mode around the attributes of the tool to get the job done. And one of the biggest aha moments for me after having read Nelson's book, I can't recollect for certain if it was the first time or perhaps maybe the first few times, but Nelson invited people to contact him. Like, if you have any questions, get a hold of me. And when I did, my questions were tool-based about the insurance policy, the attributes of the policy. And again, I cannot imitate his voice, but anybody who is blessed to know him can just picture this when I say it. He said, may I share something with you? I said, certainly. And he said, all right, if you put the best tool for the job in the hands of an incompetent, not only will that person not turn out any good work with the tool, they'll likely break the tool. He said, this is all about a process, not a product. So I etched that permanently in granite in my brain, and I began to change the way that I was thinking. Because people can get really excited, understandably so, when they develop an understanding about the attributes of a dividend-paying life insurance policy. But unless you understand the problem, the solution just won't matter to you. And Nelson was brilliant at helping us to do that. And so after the first few times of reading his book, I needed that from him in order to shift my thinking so that I could really get focused on the process, not just the tool that's used to implement it, which just so happens to be the best tool to get the job done.
Unfortunately, that tool is not available worldwide. So yeah, it's hopefully one of the struggles that we'll overcome, and the rest of the world will understand the beauty of it. We get a lot of queries from outside the United States and Canada. It's like, sorry to get you all excited about this and let you down, but the tool is only available in the North American continent.
What other challenges did you face when you first started implementing the infinite banking concept in your life?
One of the first challenges primarily was being able to explain the concept. And because when most people hear the words becoming your own banker, or they hear the words the infinite banking concept for the first time, it may trigger some degree of curiosity, but it doesn't resonate. What do you mean when you say that? And one of the mistakes that I made, and thank goodness there's a reason why they put erasers on pencils. One of the mistakes that I made very early in my career as a practitioner is that I placed a high degree of emphasis on getting people excited about the tool, and then introducing the concept secondary. And Nelson, in his infinite wisdom, he saw me speak. And after the talk, he pulled me aside, and he was great at really getting to the essence of what he wanted to share with you. And he said, firstly, you did a great job explaining the tool. But the infinite banking concept is meant to be ridiculously simple. It is not meant to be sensationalized. Don't ever sensationalize the concept. It is completely unnecessary. And from that moment on, I stopped doing that. And my production skyrocketed. And the simplest way that I can explain how that occurred is that I would not meet with someone unless they had read Nelson's book and were prepared to share with me their insights about two things. What their interpretation was of the grocery store example in the book, in your own words. And then I would ask, can you do me a favor? Take a moment and describe the problem in your own words. Take all the time you need. Because most often, the responses were either very incomplete or very shallow, which nothing wrong with that. It's a learning opportunity. But that pointed me in the right direction to help that prospect to get clarity on the problem so that when I presented the solution, it truly actually mattered and they knew what to do. Versus the inverse, where somebody approached me and said, I saw your talk and I'm so excited about dividend paying whole life insurance. And I understand that I can also use it for these purposes, but I am super excited about dividend paying whole life insurance. What I realized, full credit to Nelson for helping me to think about my thinking, is that you could do a lot of business that way, but people would only end up remembering what they purchased from you, not why they're doing this. And that was a revelation for me. And it completely transformed my production in this business. I've been blessed beyond the definition of good fortune. I've generated more than $50 million of revenue in this business. And this book, titled Becoming Your Own Banker, this is a 92-page read, as the three of us well know. And in one of my talks years ago, I mentioned this book at a $20 price tag has produced tens of millions of dollars in revenue and has served thousands of people and impacted their lives in a way that is permanent. And that may not have occurred if Nelson didn't care enough to just pull me aside and say, don't ever sensationalize this. It's completely unnecessary. Yeah, you can do a great job in getting people excited about the tool. Don't ever lose that. But understand that unless you understand the problem, the solution just won't matter. And I'll never forget that for the rest of my days.
I say the problem solution correlation also, and I picked up that from, folks like you. Had you ever heard that anywhere else besides within the IBC community?
No. Oh gosh, no. The reality of what's happening out in the marketplace is, thank goodness the Nelson Nash Institute exists first and foremost. And I mean that. We have been, I believe, to be among the biggest proponents of the Institute and all that it stands for, and making sure that anybody who we're blessed to serve on our team must be an authorized infinite banking practitioner. Because in the marketplace, I think there's still a very high degree of enthusiasm about the tool. And there's a lot of marketing that goes on about the tool. And then it gets commingled with the concept. And that can confuse the general public. And it's not really, I think that people want to be helpful and they want to be accurate in what they're sharing, and they're leading with good intention, but they could be unintentionally misleading the general public. And that's where the Institute plays a big part, with the annual Infinite Banking Think Tank Conference, with the monthly coaching sessions, the Nelson Nuggets sessions, and practitioners can surround themselves with other people of like mind, and they can learn the right way. And those are two of many things that I love about the Institute in particular.
Thanks for that plug.
You're welcome. We plug the Institute at every opportunity.
I've said this a million times around our marketing organization.
Oh,
and if producers are looking for that, then don't bother. Okay. But I guess another thing that we do that's not a norm in the sales part of the life insurance industry is to encourage our membership to share, freely give, and to help everybody be successful. So that's what we're trying to do here.
One of my dear friends, Joe Polish, who founded the Genius Network, he expressed something when I had first been introduced to him. This was back in 2019. And he said, the world gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And that is so true. And the great thing about the community of practitioners is that, yes, it is a community of giving. And people have an abundant mindset, not a scarcity mindset. And that helps. We can see that as evidenced by people who are, new to the industry and within a relatively short time frame beginning to experience success that perhaps some of us who have been around a while could have only dreamed of, that early in our journey, which is why this was all created, because we want to give people a better path and ultimately want to get this message out to people faster and with more practitioners, being engaged in that. So it's a great community to be a part of.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of pain and angst for those that have taken the road less traveled, quote unquote. So we're trying to help them out, man. So
yeah, 100%.
No, it's striking to me just how unique and special this community is. At our annual think tanks, for this people who the first time they attend it, they'll come up at some point over the event and say to me, "Everyone is so welcoming and so supportive and just so generous in their time." And I'm like, yeah, of course. So yeah, that definitely, after a couple of times of hearing that, I was like, okay, yeah, we are really special. We're a special group of people. And that's what I love so much about our practitioners and students.
Amen to that. And if I may just add one thing that, can get lost, unfortunately, is the pre-recorded seminar that Nelson delivered countless number of times over the years. And people can view that. And one of the things that we do as a best practice is we host a watch party once a year. And we invite our entire client community and we invite our entire advisor team. And we get together and we watch the seminar in segments. And at the end of each segment, we pause, we do a group breakout session, we think about our thinking, we have people share what they're thinking, and it creates breakthroughs for other people who are in attendance who may not have thought that way about what Nelson said. And so I would encourage anybody, whether you're a consumer, maybe you're investigating this process to see if it can be an advantage for you, would be to do a few things. First and foremost, make sure that you're connecting with an authorized infinite banking practitioner. That is an absolute must-do. I would encourage you to ask the practitioner to show you perhaps a sample size of reviews from existing clients so that you can gauge that practitioner's proficiency and experience. To watch Nelson's 10-hour seminar, it will be, I would say, even stronger than an ironclad guarantee. It will be among the best 10 hours that you've spent in your lifetime investing in yourself. Read Nelson's book. It'll take you less than an afternoon to get through it. And then meet with your authorized infinite banking practitioner and share your thinking, share your insights. Make sure that you have clarity before you do anything at all, because there's no hurry. It's so important to have clarity so that you do it rightly, not quickly.
That's great advice. Absolutely. Yep.
I'll tell you that the breakthroughs that come up when people watch Nelson, Nobody on planet Earth ever has been or ever will be as effective as Nelson was at sharing this concept. And what better place to learn from than a pre-recorded seminar, because he delivered it the same way every time. And every time I watch it personally, and I'm blessed, I'm 16 years into my journey with this concept, I take pages of notes and I see something that I didn't see the last time that I watched it. So that is one thing that I hope viewers take away. Get your hands on a copy of that seminar, watch it. You'll be glad you did.
It's been edited down to 6.5 hours.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
But we kept all the juicy stuff on there, and it's available on the website. So there you go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Jayson, you had, a personal relationship with Nelson over the years. You've already shared some of the stories, some of the advice that he gave you over the years. But do you have any memories that you just really stand out from your time with him that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yes, I'll share one that, again, all of them I'll never forget, but this one was good. So Rebecca and I, when my beautiful wife, Rebecca, she is absolutely incredible. I wouldn't be speaking to either of you if it weren't for Rebecca. She is incredible. And she had shared with me when we first began our journey with this process in 2008. She said, well, okay, if you want to get rid of the mortgage on our home by age 45, there was no rhyme or reason to picking that number. It was literally the first age number that came to mind. I was 32 years young when I started my journey with this process. And I said, dear, let's be mortgage free by age 45. And she said, great, that sounds like a great time frame. Let's do that. Well, 7 years into our journey, we achieved that. I called Nelson. First person I called. Nelson, you're not going to believe it. Say, we got rid of the conventional bank, and true to form, Nelson said, you sitting down? And I said, no. And he said, take a seat, boy. And I said, okay. So I literally sat down, and he said to me, he said, do you want to be an honest banker? And I said, I sure do. And he said, well, how long was the original loan schedule? And I said, well, Nelson, the mortgage was 40 years. You could get a 40-year amortization schedule on a mortgage in Canada back in 2008. And he said, well, I need you to finish the original loan schedule. And I said, another 33 years. It seems like a long time, Nelson. And he said, well, he took me back to Parkinson's law. And he said, what do you think is going to happen to those expenses of yours now that you've got an extra $1,800 a month? And I said, well, I think my expenses might rise to consume that. And he said, exactly. So I had to continue finishing that original loan schedule, which we still do to this day. Had I not received that advice from Nelson, Parkinson's law would have likely kicked in precisely the way that he described it, and my expenses would have likely risen to consume that surplus income. And so that helped instill discipline in all of the lending that we do as a family. And we've transferred that amazing coaching moment to everyone that we're blessed to serve. And so that is another memory of Nelson recognizing a moment where I was so enthusiastic that I was about to burn this mortgage. And he sort of stepped me back and said, hold on a second. Don't forget, you're running this as a business. The infinite banking concept is a process, but you need to treat this like a business. Look no further than the grocery store example. Go back and read that again. And I said, Nelson, I can't thank you enough for that incredible advice. And he was just always generous that way. He just always had time to talk to you.
Yeah, that's good.
Isn't that good?
That's good. That's really good. So here's a personal question. So $1,800 a month, is that premium for a new policy, or is that you're servicing other debt? Well, how you do? What do you?
It's both. And so initially, after that 7th year, it was entirely redirected toward the policy loan balance that we had accumulated to get rid of the conventional bank. And then once that was extinguished, that money is premium. And I'll share, if I may, when Nelson, his brilliance just continues to surface, when he reminded us so often that the infinite banking concept is meant to be ridiculously simple. I was in a session with colleagues earlier this week on Tuesday, and I asked, because I was reading a portion in Nelson's book that I hadn't read in a while, and something came up for me that was ridiculously simple. So I asked everybody in the group, I said, may I ask you to describe for me in 2 words or less what recapturing the interest that you would have otherwise paid to someone else's bank? Can you describe recapturing the interest that you would have otherwise paid to someone else's bank in 2 words or less? So we're getting all kinds of feedback from the group. And finally, after, I don't know, must have been at least 20 responses, I said, may I offer a suggestion? And everybody said, yeah, of course. I said, pay premium. That's so simple. And you could have heard a pin drop, and everybody was like, oh my goodness, because I'm meeting with a prospective client, or I'm meeting with an existing client or a colleague in the business, and I'm trying to explain the whole process of recapturing the interest. But what is it truly? It's paying premium. That's how you recapture the interest. You pay premium. And so Nelson's simplicity surfacing yet again. And I've read the book, I can't tell you countless of times, but this was a eureka moment for me 16 years into my journey.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And I had the same kind of moment. We know what the problem is, and the solution is premium.
Amen to that.
I mean, I hate to say it, and I did a short talk at one of our coaching academies, and I was focusing on language, like a dump into a policy. No, it's not a dump, it's premium. I went down that path, and every answer was, no, it's premium. No, it's called premium. No, the correct word is premium.
Jayson, you mentioned your family bank system, and you've shared about that in the past. Do you mind sharing a little bit about how you guys started that, how it's grown with our listeners?
Absolutely. I'd be honored to. I'd say right around that time, probably 7-8 years into the process. And we host Sunday family dinner. We've been doing that since Rebecca and I moved back to Canada in 2008. And so every Sunday we have the entire family, we enjoy a meal, get recharged for the week ahead. And I would not explain the infinite banking concept at dinner, but I would always give thanks to this gentleman named Nelson Nash, that people in the family were like, why do you keep referencing this gentleman? Well, I would explain, he's a mentor, he's a wonderful human being. And so finally, family began to ask, like, what are you doing with this? You call it infinite banking? What is that exactly? And they said, well, best way to learn is to simulate. So what I would propose to anybody in the family is that when you need a vehicle, appliances, perhaps a renovation, anything that you would have otherwise paid cash for, leased, or financed, come and have a conversation with me, and I'd be happy to lend the money for that purchase on 2 conditions. 1, you've got to give me the opportunity to show you how I do this so that you can learn to do it for yourself. And 2, you've got to understand that I treat this like a business. So repayment has to occur on time, all the time, without exception. And we established some very simple criteria, and the family began to simulate. Before learning about the concept, they began to borrow, repay. They began to experience how ridiculously simple it was. And then that gave rise to, I need you to take some time, spend less than an afternoon, read Nelson's book, meet with me. We'll discuss your insights and what's come up for you. And then as more children came along, including my own and nephews and nieces, I was ensuring all of their lives, the moment that they were born, And then eventually we began to gather as a family and have conversation. And this blossomed naturally into what we now refer to as our annual family banking meeting. And we all gather, we discuss how we're utilizing the system, how we're controlling the function of financing as it relates to our needs. We acknowledge and recognize the kids who have all taken policy loans and repaid policy loans. My son Jackson and my nephew Evan are announcing the release of their book titled Diapers to Dollars at this upcoming annual think tank, giving a teenager's perspective on the infinite banking concept, because this is all that they've known. They will never see a conventional bank for anything other than the convenience of debit. And I say that, I repeat that verbatim as Nelson shared it with me. Verbatim, quotes. That's exactly the way that Nelson would have articulated that. We have 77 policies, soon to be 78, in our family banking system. Our annual premiums are $1.56 million a year. We have 27 individual lives insured. And that reminds me, can I share one quick thing about Nelson?
Please.
So, David, I don't recall if you were at this particular talk, but you may have heard Nelson share this anyway over the years. An attendee asked Nelson at a talk that Nelson would work through sponsors and he would speak at seminars. And an attendee said, Nelson, what about this notion of diversification? Like, shouldn't you be diversified in stocks and real estate and, bullion and all these other things? And Nelson said, well, he usually just have this sort of pregnant pause. And he said, at that time, I think the quantity was 48. We have 48 policies, 20 or 21 lives insured. And wouldn't you know it, everyone is going to die someday. I'd say I'm pretty well diversified. Well, of course, the entire audience, right? Nelson just had a way of just having people just laugh. And the person who asked the question, I recall that just looking over at this gentleman, and he's like nodding, like, that makes perfect sense. So Nelson again went on to explain, like, I'm diversified in lives insured. And then he went on to share the story about how someone that he had insured but had become estranged, had passed away, and there was a windfall of death benefit. And he would ask the question, like, do you think that this windfall erased many of the financial mistakes that I had made in my lifetime? And people would acknowledge that and say, yeah, of course. And in our family, sadly, we've had 2 death benefit claims, and we've replenished the family's money pool. And for succeeding generations, where Nelson encouraged us to transfer the stewardship, the mentality. So not just the tool, but the mentality. And I'll tell you something that I hope a viewer or listener, especially one who's an advisor, can take away as incredibly valuable. We have so many parents who insure their children. And if you develop lasting relationships with your clients, those children are going to grow into young adults. And we had an instance where a client of ours, 13 years into their journey, transferred a policy to one of their adult children, one of their daughters, and their daughter surrendered the policy almost immediately in exchange for the cash surrender value. That particular daughter had not been engaged in family banking meetings with that family or engaging in the concept or the process. We could not get a hold of the parents and share that, understandably so, because the ownership had been transferred. And so what we've been expressing to clients, generational wealth is a term that gets utilized, and it is so shallow. What about generational knowledge? What about generational family values? Generational ambition, generational perseverance, generational stewardship, long before the wealth. And please, I implore you, do not transfer ownership of an insurance contract to a child unless you've trusted but verified that they understand what to do with that tool and why you put it into place when they couldn't put it into place for themselves. It's an asset and it has value. And so that was just such a sad day. Like literally our entire team, we have 52 people on our team, and our entire team felt that. It was such a sad day. It was like, oh my goodness. And we made every effort to say, I know we don't have an established relationship, but can we just connect and just explore this a little bit more before the decision? So at least you're making the most informed decision. No. And what did Nelson teach us? He said, if you have a tree that's well rooted and it's grown several branches, paid up additions, rather than cut down the whole tree and kill it, if you need to, worst case scenario, you can chop a few branches off the tree and it's still going to continue growing and it's still going to stay alive. And so we don't want people chopping down that tree. But yet, sadly, even in an instance with us, it happened. And but it was a lesson. It was a lesson for us to do simple better and to communicate to our existing clients that have children where they have policies in place, to just plant that seed to say the time will come where you may feel the desire to gift a policy. You're not gifting them, you're setting them up for failure. And I know that may be that may land a little harshly, but it takes that for someone to go, whoa, hold on. Can you explain what you mean by that? And then it opens the door for us to articulate it. So I hope that listeners and viewers take that away as valuable. But our family banking system is thriving. All the kids are involved, and it's very easy to do, as evidenced by what Jackson and Evan are going to share in the framework of how to do this. Because adults have these myths around children's understanding of this concept. Like it's going to be too complicated. It's not. Or they may find it difficult to understand. They don't. Or they may just not be interested. They are. You just have to talk to them about it. Isn't that good?
That's great. That reminds me of a story that Nelson told me, and you might know this too. He did usually seminars out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and one of the attendees was Kevin Lasco, and he took his daughter to a seminar. But either Kevin or Nelson said, "Well, can you go ahead and write a one-pager and tell me what you learned at the seminar?" And she was like, I don't know, 11 years old, maybe something like that. She wrote, "Yeah, this is simple. Don't steal the peace." And they're still, Kevin's still out there doing his thing. I think he's a chiropractor. He's not an insurance guy. So that's simple as that. Little kid, don't steal the peace. This is simple.
Can I show you guys something?
Yeah.
Sure.
This is something we got for our kids years ago. Let me show this to you.
Yeah. I'm sending financial.
It's a piggy bank. I love that. Yeah.
So
Hey, we need one of those for each table next week.
Are you the green giant on the?
no, that's a great guy. I don't know.
Is your face on? Is your face?
No, that's not my face on there. Oh goodness, yeah. It's just right, simple ways to teach, and yeah, the kids pick up on this way faster than adults do, and that's just simply the truth. And once they grasp it, oh my goodness, as Nelson would say if he were with us here today, what a peaceful, stress-free way of life it is.
Going back to your banking system, I mean, I used to think I was doing really good, man. It's like, hey, and I'd show mine just to say this is not just talk. Okay, it does exist. Okay, and here's what it looks like for me, and here's some real numbers and whatever. And so nowadays, I'm afraid to show it.
Oh goodness, no!
Because it's not up there, but whatever.
Well, yeah, what I would say in addition to that, David, is that's why Nelson, I think, was intentional around describing the all-American young man who's earning $28,500 a year, and really getting across that you don't have to be rich to get into the banking business. And when you have a large family, as we're blessed with a large family, there's a big need for money versus maybe a smaller family where there's not as large of a need for money. And we have now, last year when we updated the practitioner community, we were at about 85,000. Now it's 100,000 a month flowing back in loan repayments from the family. This is money that would have otherwise been permanently transferred away. And yes, that is a big number, but we have a big family. And so it's all proportionate. You do not have to be rich to do this, and you do not have to worry about, do I have to be paying an exorbitant amount of premium? No, we see just through feedback from the practitioner community and through our own experience, we have clients that they're paying as little as $100 a month in premium for maybe a policy on a child or a grandchild. And there are clients who pay several six figures a month in premium. And it's just a different proportion. It's a different need. It's a different desired outcome. But the point is, both parties are doing it. It's not about the premium amount. It's about implementing the process. So getting started somewhere is the best next step for somebody, regardless of the premium amount.
Yeah, I get it. And, the first policy that I ever bought from Nelson Nash was not gigantic. I actually found the data on it last week. I don't own it anymore. We 1035 it for something more substantial. But I was paying $95 a month premium. Okay. And the face amount was like $75,000, something like that. That was my first policy. And that's all I could afford. Right. So you're exactly right. But the key is you're right. Start with something. And then as your life grows, you keep planting new trees,
Jayson, there's a lot of quote unquote financial advisors that may be well known out there. They may say this isn't the best way to use your money, or they have some arguments against this. What do you say to that?
Thank you for asking that, because some of the larger financial personalities that the general public is well aware of, when they're describing what a person should or shouldn't do with their money, it's typically regarding debt. So getting out of debt, that's never bad advice. That's really good advice. Like, you should get out of debt and you should stay out of debt. And then what you should do in the way of growing your money, buy term life insurance and invest the difference in mutual funds or the stock market, or maybe a combination of both. And when there's resistance around, you should not pay premium into a dividend paying life insurance policy, you should not implement the infinite banking concept, you should buy term life insurance and invest the difference. Well, my response has always been, and is very simple. Can you walk me through, take all the time you need, how buy term and invest the difference helps you control how you finance the things that you need throughout your lifetime? And of course, there can be no intelligent response to that, because it's a completely different, we're not addressing controlling how you finance the things that you need when you're contemplating investing money. Nelson was very clear. This concept has nothing to do with investing. It's all about controlling how you finance the things you need, which can certainly include investments. So it's a distinction. It's helping somebody to think about their thinking by asking a very simple question, and it snaps that person's thinking out of either or comparison to, wait a second, if I want to invest money and be temporarily insured, then I should buy term life insurance and invest the difference. That's what you should absolutely do. But someone must perform the function of banking as it relates to your needs. There are no exceptions. And so how much of that function do you control today? Well, none. You have an opportunity. And the only way to get the job done is to use the best tool to get the job done. And the only way to purchase the best tool to get the job done is to pay premium. And so I've had incredible success with people, looking at it from that vantage point and saying, nobody's ever rebutted that way. It's always, hold on, It typically goes to, well, if you're suggesting that you can get 10, 12, 13% rates of return, let me show you what's actually happening inside of a dividend paying life insurance policy. You will get no farther because, again, unless the person understands the problem, the solution just won't matter to them. And so that's why I just encourage any advisor listening to this, maybe a student practitioner, an existing practitioner, if you find that helpful, please utilize that. But understand what you're utilizing, of course, before you express it, and really think about your thinking, because all those investments and products, they're not good or bad. They all have their own sets of attributes, which are important to understand. But controlling how you finance the things that you need throughout your lifetime, recapturing the interest that you would have otherwise paid to someone else's bank to finance the things that you need throughout your lifetime, there is no better, peaceful, or stress-free way to get that job done than the infinite banking concept.
But it's so much more than a banking tool also,
Yeah, it really is.
If you have the assets, opportunities will arise and chase you down. Okay, there's all those different branches of this thing also.
So true.
But that's what you're talking about is the essence. Okay, the solution. That's in the book. Yeah.
Well, and we hear, I think the three of us and anybody who spends, any time on social media, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, all these platforms where I always, at every opportunity, just always want to express, like, this is not a secret that the wealthy don't want you to know. This is not a secret that the banks don't want you to know. That is just simply not true. It just isn't. Everybody banks. That is true. And someone must perform that function. That's also true. And so a person should ask themselves, how much of that function do I control as it relates to my needs? And I would add to that, what disadvantages would there be to controlling all of it?
So that's the master class in IBC right there.
I'm the sum parts of everyone who's mentored me. I give all the credit to Nelson first and foremost, always have, always will, and to all the mentors that I've been blessed to develop relationships with. Anybody who's considering attending an annual Infinite Banking Think Tank event, even if you're a guest of an existing practitioner, whether you're a client or maybe somebody who's considering enrolling in the practitioner program, you've heard the expression, when you go to a conference, as long as you leave with one great idea, it's going to be worth your valuable time. I would suggest as long as you leave with one great relationship, because the relationships that were born out of my attendance at these events, which I would not miss unless there was some form of like apocalyptic nuclear event, the relationships that were formed are and have been lifelong, lasting relationships of some of the most giving, kind-hearted people that you'll ever meet, and have contributed to my good fortune and success. And now I feel an obligation to do what I can to repay an incalculable debt of gratitude to Nelson, to you, to your family, by attending and lifting other people up. And so approach an event like the Think Tank with the desire to leave with one new relationship, and it could change your life permanently.
Well, Jayson, as we conclude our time today, we like to always end with this question to our guests. What does the infinite banking concept mean to you?
A peaceful, stress-free way of life financially.
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Jayson. We really appreciate you and all that you've done.
I'm humbled and I'm privileged. Thank you both. It was an honor to be here.